Hello, coders. Hello, coders. Good afternoon. It is 5:30. It is Monday, the 3rd of February, and it is episode 216 of the How to Code Well podcast. And today we're going to be talking about substance abuse with object orientation. With object orientation. And it's encapsulation, right? So the title of this is a bit of a play on the whole OOP type stuff. The title being trapping a substance. What was the title again? Trapping a substance. I don't even know the title of my own podcast. Trapping a substance within another material, because that is what the definition of encapsulation is, right? So you're trapping a substance within another material. We're going to talk about that later on. We'll start by talking through some of the things that have happened with How to Code Well, and there is a tutorial showcase that I want to talk about. A tutorial that someone else has created, and I want to highlight that. It's to do with Laravel. So the first thing I would like to show is the latest Laravel tutorial that I have created. And I'm going to just close down my OBS or move that to one side for a minute, just so I can make a bit of room. And click on this button here, Pete. Well done. So we have a new tutorial called How to Supply Multiple Parameters into Laravel Middleware. So if I click onto that. So this is on howtocodewell.net. This is the latest tutorial, the latest Laravel tutorial that I pushed out last Thursday. And this demonstrates how you can supply multiple parameters into your Laravel middleware. Now, spoiler alert, it is a case of putting in commas into the request. So here, for people who are watching this podcast, an example here is the root middleware. We've got the check user role request, and you get the class name and you concatenate that with a string starting with the colon, and then you've got then you've got the rest of the string, and you split the string up using a comma, and then that gets translated into the handle method, or gets passed into the handle method as two separate parameters split by that comma. So the first one here is the role, and the second one we've got a parameter called foo. So we have check user role requests dot class or colon class, that is the class name, and we concatenate that to the string of colon manager comma test, where role would be the manager and foo would be the test. So I'll leave a link in the show notes below, because people who are probably listening to this are probably thinking, what on earth are you talking about, man? So this is how you can pass in multiple parameters into your middleware. Why would you want to do this? Well, there's all sorts of various different reasons. If your middleware requires some form of extra parameters, you can do that. You can supply those through, say, your roots file or other files that hook into the middleware. You can pass those parameters in there like that. Previously, we did a tutorial where I was showing you how to log in to Laravel without a login form, and we were using the parameters supplied to the middleware as the role. And we were actually supplying a pipe separated string where we could supply multiple roles to that middleware that would then check. If I was to find this, where is this? Yeah. So we pass in a string of role here, and then we explode that string by the pipe, which then gives us the array of roles that this middleware will then check. And if I go to the actual middleware assignment here, so we've got root middleware, check user role, class, and then in this case, what we're doing is we're concatenating this string where it's colon and then editor pipe manager as a single string. That goes in obviously as a single parameter because we're not using commas, and then we can explode that by the pipe, which means that we get an array of both editor and manager, and we're checking for the user that has those particular roles for that access. Okay, so it's a bit difficult to explain those over audio, but if you haven't done so already, do subscribe to the YouTube channel, How to Code Well, so you can actually see what I'm talking about. And I'll obviously leave links into these tutorials as I go. So actually, we've got quite a few Laravel tutorials now. So how to supply multiple parameters into Laravel, how to log into Laravel without a login form, how to alter requests in Laravel middleware, what is Laravel middleware, and then we have tutorials that I did for Cloudways. If I clicked on more tutorials here, we have getting started with continual integration and continual delivery using GitHub Actions. That was a Laravel tutorial. Another Laravel tutorial was how to create a bash deploy script that would deploy a Laravel to a VPS. And then we've got build and deploy your first Laravel API. And we've got some other PHP tutorials in the mix, how to concatenate PHP strings, when to use PHP switch or if or match statements, and then we've got one about changing PHP ini settings as well using Laravel 2. So yeah, we've got quite a few tutorials now specifically with Laravel. We're going to continue this, and then we're going to move into some Symfony coming up. So I have a load of these already scheduled up to go out, all the way up to the mid of June now, which is pretty awesome. So if you want to get these before anybody else does, then please do consider joining the Patreon and or the YouTube members to get those as early access. And also, what I was considering, a feature that I would love to have on the website on howtocodewell.net is a members only sort of area where there is, say, a monthly subscription where you can actually get these videos and these tutorials before anybody else does. At the moment, they're all being scheduled up in Patreon and in YouTube. And with YouTube, you can schedule them up for members only access first, and then they go public. And so that's how I've got the YouTube members set up. And also with YouTube members, there is the chat facility and badges and emojis and all of that jazz. But I would like more people to be on howtocodewell.net than the other various platforms, obviously, and one of the perks would be perhaps to have access to these tutorials before anybody else does, and then of course have access to the courses as well. And one of the latest courses that I created was the PHP login from scratch course. So this is a course where it's got 11 tutorials. It's not a video course, it's just text-based courses. A text-based course where it teaches you TDD, a TDD approach to building a PHP project from scratch without using any framework, and it teaches you how to create a secure area using PHP sessions and all of that good fun stuff. Now, we did have a January sale. It's no longer January anymore, and so the prices have unfortunately gone up. But what I will say is that for those people who have purchased these courses, I will be doing a customer survey, like a customer satisfaction survey in the next few days, just to see how everybody's getting on with the courses that they've purchased. Because, obviously I want to make this platform much better and improve upon that. So if I can get early feedback from students, then that would be fantastic. And then your feedback will help improve the courses going forward, which is awesome. So if you've purchased these courses, and I know I'm focusing on the PHP login from scratch course because that's a popular course. If you've purchased these courses, then yeah, please do check your emails in the next coming days, because I will be putting out some surveys where you can fill out the survey, and then I can look to improve these courses and also look to what other courses you would like to do. And the survey at the minute has only got 5 questions in it, so it's not going to take a terribly long time to do. But yeah, the ideal scenario for me is to have this as a members site, right? So you would have membership, a monthly membership, and you have access to everything. And one of the questions that I was asked by a student who bought the course was, what support can I give to me? What support does the student get? And one idea that I've got going forward, and again, it's one of these sort of one of these ideas that I have no idea when I'm going to be able to do it. It's an idea that I would love to do, but again, it's how I implement it and how long it's going to take and all of that stuff, because there's other things in the pipeline. One idea is to create a forum where you have a forum board per course, right? And so you only have access to that board, that forum board, if you've either A, got a monthly membership, or B, have purchased it as a single course. Because I think it's really important to still have courses that you can buy singly, because not everybody wants to have a monthly membership, right? And I can do all sorts of fancy things with discounts and all of this stuff and bundle deals and all of that jazz. I've got loads of ideas around how to do that, and also how to offer people monthly memberships if they've already bought the courses or a course. Then maybe perhaps some form of like loyalty scheme where if you buy 3 courses, then that's 3 months free or something like that. I don't know. I haven't really kind of worked that out, but I've got so many ideas for this How to Code Well platform. It's a question of what happens, and what happens first, what takes priority, and like I said, one of the questions was what support can I give? At the moment, it's email support. There is these courses, some of them at least are on GitHub, so I can provide you those GitHub access, and I'll update the course through GitHub. I can also alter the tutorials if you find an issue with it, and I'm available to be. You can reach out via email. I'm going to try and put all of these into, say, a FAQ page where people can see like these frequently asked questions, because I think going forward that I'm going to get more of these questions, and it'll be nice to condense them into some form of like list where people can go, oh yeah, okay, I'll that sounds like a good support setup. Another question that I was asked, and I will just play around with this for a minute before we get into the encapsulation stuff, and that is why don't I put these courses on Udemy? And me and Udemy, we don't really get on much because the Udemy terms of service is incredibly strict, as well as all the other terms of services that you get for these platforms, these educational platforms such as Skillshare. It is you put your course on their platform, and you cannot put your course on any other platform, which means that they basically, I don't want to say they own your content, but there is a lot of regulation. And Udemy will take your courses off if they don't think that it's if it doesn't meet their stuff. So, there's been a couple of times where a course of mine has been taken off of Udemy just because they wanted to remove it, which is annoying. And also with Skillshare, it's like it can only ever be exclusively on Skillshare. So I have tried those platforms before, and they are very tight with what you can and cannot do. And also there are a huge amount of features that I would like to do myself for this platform where I just wouldn't be able to do that on Udemy. So as I mentioned before, I would love to do bundled prices. So for example, if you want to buy, I don't know, we've got like a health food shop in the UK here called Holland and Barrett, and they do this really cool thing where you can do a mix and match 3 for 2, that kind of thing, or a penny sale. So you buy like 3 products and you get the third one for the cheapest third one for a penny, that kind of thing. So I wouldn't mind playing around with that kind of stuff. There's also one of the sites that I use frequently is MyProtein, because I like to have protein protein shakes, and they have a way on their checkout where if you if you spend a certain amount, you get free delivery, and also they give you gifts and all of this stuff. So I wouldn't mind playing around with stuff like that. So, you buy a bunch of PHP courses and the system knows that you're buying PHP courses and so offers you another PHP course at a discounted rate. That kind of, those kind of recommendation mechanics. And yeah, there's a ton of things that I think I would like to put into the site, but I don't think the other e-learning platforms would allow me to do that. Also, when you sign up to the newsletter, I also want to offer discount codes there too. And as I mentioned, trying to get people who have purchased singular courses onto membership would be pretty cool. So sort of onloading those. And to do that, you would have the discounts as well. So, I see that you've been purchased X amount of courses. Do you want to turn your access into a membership access? And here is an incentive to do that. So yeah, there's a lot of things that I would love to do on How to Code Well. And no, I'm not going to be putting anything on Udemy or Skillshare in anytime soon. Anyway, right. I wanted to show off a tutorial because I think it's nice to talk about the community and show what the community has done. If I go over to the browser again, there is because we're talking about a lot of Laravel, I found this tutorial, or this tutorial series, I should say. Laravel 101, everything you need to know to get started with this popular PHP framework. This is by Kazam. This was actually pushed out on the 26th of July 2023, so and last edited on the 2nd of September 2023. So the stuff in here might be slightly dated, but the emphasis of this is will not be lost on new people coming to Laravel. And I had a quick read through, right? I say a quick read through. I went through the first set of tutorials, and it seems all good. So I wanted to showcase this. So the first one is everything you need to get started, and then the second tutorial is how to define routes in your projects. Third tutorial, how to pass data between views. Fourth is exploring Laravel controllers, blah, 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 blah. And it goes on to like 15. So there's 15 text-based tutorials in here. So it goes all the way from starting up Laravel, installing it, and then creating the project, running PHP Artisan Serve, all the way, if I go to the last ever tutorial, all the way to a practical guide for seeders and factories, right? So how to create a factory, I think that's a user definition, because you've got the password in there and email verified. How to use Faker, or is that an advert? That might actually be an advert. No, that is using Faker. Of course, I just saw it there. Fake, yeah. So using Faker, and then PHP Artisan make factory, tag factory, creating a tag factory, dealing with the model, and all of that jazz. So yeah, do check this out. I mean, database seeders as well. How to seed the database. There's a task seeder there. And how to create, the PHP Laravel develop and backend tags. It seems to be like quite a thorough series of tutorials. Obviously, you can't learn Laravel in 15 tutorials, right? There are so many different parts of Laravel that I'm sure this hasn't touched on yet. But it does do a good job. There's one here for creating and submitting a form to the server, so it hits all the common areas. So here, this tutorial that Kazam has done shows you how to build a form in HTML and how to supply that back to the controller and how to handle the request. Some of these images appear to be slightly broken, but let's scroll down a little bit further to, here. So it's talking about the configuration. In a previous tutorial, we used Tinker to save a record. Now we'll do the same here to save the task submitted through the form into the table. So you can see on there, you've got the form on the right hand side and then the code on the left hand side there. So yeah, I think that's a really super set of tutorials. And even though How to Code Well, I want to promote my own stuff, I also want to promote stuff coming from the community too. And of course, if you've got any suggestions, if you've got any tutorials that you've written and or blog posts that you've written and you want me to talk about them and promote them here, then please do get in touch. Go to howtocodewell.net/contact. Let's get some good links going. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about, or the point of this show, is the encapsulation, because we've been talking a lot about object orientation, design patterns, software architecture. Last week we talked about what OO was in terms of the fact that you've got objects, classes, and class instance. Now we're moving down a little bit further into the world of OOP, and there are a couple of principles, 4 principles of OOP. I want to target one of them, and that is encapsulation. And when I asked AI what is encapsulation, it came it came out with this response, and I thought that this is actually a fun response. That obviously, because I didn't give it the context of it's for programming, it just was talking about trapping substances, and I suppose that's what we're doing, right? So here we go. This is what I asked AI what encapsulation means, and it said encapsulation is a technique for trapping a substance within another material. It can be used to protect materials from undesirable conditions or to restrict access to certain components, right? So let me say that again, because this really does sum up encapsulation for OO as well, right? So I asked AI what encapsulation means, and it said encapsulation is a technique for trapping a substance within another material. It can be used to protect materials from undesirable conditions or to restrict access to certain components. So encapsulating, right? Think about capsules, and like I'm a supplement junkie, right? So I'll take loads of supplements, and those supplements are in capsules, right? So for example, omega-3 capsule, or other capsules that have perhaps multivitamins and whatnot in. So you're encapsulating it. Okay, so in terms of object-oriented programming, encapsulation is one of the 4 principles that every OO programmer needs to learn. So I haven't actually written this down, so let me see if I can remember it live here. So the first one, encapsulation. That's a freebie. Second one... Second one is inheritance, abstraction. That's 3. So what's the 4th one? Let me think about that. We've got abstraction, inheritance, encapsulation, and what is the 4th one? What is it's not polymorphism. Is it polymorphism? It might be polymorphism. Let's put a pin in that. I should know this, being a 20-year-old, a programmer with 20 years experience plus. Anyway, before I embarrass myself any further, let's continue. So in terms of object-oriented programming, encapsulation is one of the 4 principles, and I wish I wrote those down here, that every OO programmer needs to learn. Encapsulation is the means of grouping data and methods together into a single class, right? So you're encapsulating, you're grouping your data and the operations that act upon the data into a single class, into a single unit, right? Data definitions and operations are hidden from outside access by their visibility scopes, and public access is granted by interfaces that are implemented on the class. Public accessor methods can also be used to set and get data held within the object. The raw data itself should be restricted and only accessed by the defined mechanisms. I wrote this morning at 6 a.m. before a cup of tea. Okay, let's just read that again. In terms of object-oriented programming, encapsulation is one of the 4 principles that every OO programmer needs to learn. Encapsulation is the means of grouping data and methods together into a single class. Data definitions and operations are hidden from outside access by their visibility scopes, and public access is granted by interfaces that are implemented on the class. Public accessor methods can be used to set and get data held within the object. The raw data itself should be restricted and only be accessed by defined mechanisms. So let's just pull that all apart, right? That was me just doing a massive brain dump this morning. And let's talk about this and remember what AI said. Encapsulation is a technique for trapping a substance within another material. It can be used to protect materials from undesirable conditions or to restrict access to certain components, right? So that is what AI says about encapsulation. And with OOP, encapsulation is a means of grouping data, right? So if you've got last week we were talking about cars and houses in terms of classes, objects, and instances, right? So you would have a car, right? And that car object, or that car class, sorry, will have only the stuff about the car in it. It won't have anything to do with the garage or, you know, the monthly finance of that car or or anything to do with the user, right? It has only got those things in about the car, which means that you can start defining things better. Things become a little bit more well defined, for a better use of a term. The data definitions and operations are also hidden from outside access, right? So when you instantiate a car object, and what you're doing is you're either injecting parameters in using getters and setters, right? So you're setting parameters, or when you construct your object, you are then passing in arguments into the constructor to set up and build your car, right? So if you think of it like manufacturing a car, how do you manufacture a car? How do you build a car from nothing, right? So what are the components needed? And those would become the definitions of the class, right? So the fact that it's got 4 wheels, the fact that it's got a steering wheel, the fact that the seats are leather, okay, the fact that it can do this speed. Also, when we start talking about, I mean, we're not moving into abstract stuff here, another one of the principles. But when you're talking about, or inheritance, but when you're talking about what makes up an object, you then find that there are many objects that make up that object, right? So for example, with a car, you have 4 wheels, right? But if you think about what is a wheel, so forget about the car, just think about the wheel, right? So you've got a tire, you've got the size of the wheel, right? You've got the amount of tread that's left. You've got the weight of the wheel. You've got whether it's got alloys on it, the size of the wheel, all of that stuff. They become the definition of the wheel, right? So the wheel itself could then become a class that gets injected into the car, and actually it gets injected 4 times because you've got 4 wheels, right? We will touch upon that part of my brain when we get to polymorphism, I think, because that's a very polymorphic way of saying that you're going to supply 4 wheels to this car, but you don't know which. Yeah, we'll get onto polymorphism on another episode, but I was kind of leaning into that direction. But then, you know, you can really start getting granular. You can say, well, what about the brake pedal? Maybe the brake pedal itself is an object. So you can get really granular, right? Really granular, and you find that everything becomes objects, and then everything can be easily defined into these small encapsulated kind of units of code. And this means that when you start having encapsulated units of code, you can then move those capsules around, right? They become, because they're well defined, they're like Lego bricks. You can snap them together, right? So this wheel goes into this car, snap, you know. And also, again, I don't really want to move into the other principles apart from encapsulation, but you then can you then can share and reuse some of these things. Maybe, for example, this wheel actually doesn't just go onto this car. Maybe it goes somewhere else. Maybe it goes onto a different vehicle, right? Maybe this steering wheel in this particular car can also go in other cars. And so when you've got objects that actually only have the responsibility of I am a wheel and that's all I care about, right? That can then be, what's the right word I'm using? I need to find portable. It can become portable into other things, right? It can become injected. It can become set to other objects. All right, I have no idea where I am in my notes, so here we go. Encapsulation helps with data protection, code maintainability, code reuse, and adaptability to new requirements. Okay, so one thing I want to say before we go in any further, one major advantage of encapsulation is the fact that you are restricting access to certain things. So, for example, you don't want to have everything publicly available to your code. You want to use visibility scopes. Say like these, the attributes of this object are actually private, right? So we can't actually manipulate the data outside of the object. It has to be, you have to run it through a routine in order to manipulate that. So a good example here is, say, for example, you've got a checkout page and you've got lots of line items, and each line item becomes perhaps an object where you've got a price. You can't manipulate that price from anywhere outside of the class or outside of the object. You have to run an operation in order to update that price, and it could be an operation of adding a quantity to that line item or removing a quantity from that line item. And so that price will get altered and manipulated via that routine. You can't just say, hey, line item, change your price. You have to run it through a specifically defined routine, which would be the method, add to cart, remove from cart, that kind of thing, right? Where it would then check, do I already have this line item? And if I do, we'll then make a calculation based on the price of 1 unit versus against the and multiply that against, say, the quantity of what I've got. And for a car, you wouldn't be manipulating your wheel when you're playing around with your steering wheel, right? So the idea of encapsulation also gives us the ability to be very restricted as to what we can and cannot do to our objects outside of the scope of the objects themselves. You'll see, especially in the PHP world, that you have the private, protected, and public visibility scopes, where public means that, all bets are off, and you can publicly alter. If the attribute has public visibility scopes, then you can access that and you can manipulate that from outside of the object. Please don't do that. What you want to be doing is either using getters and setters, so you're getting that private property, or you're setting that private property from a public method. Or even better, you would use interfaces to say, hey, this operation is allowed if it is implemented, if this class implements this particular interface. And we'll get into interfaces at some other point, because I know that's a big topic in itself. But the idea here is that public accessor methods can also be used to set and get data held within the object. The raw data itself should be restricted and only accessed by defined mechanisms. And when I say defined mechanisms, I mean those methods that have the ability to run those particular routines, right? You shouldn't just allow things to be altered willy-nilly. you have to be running it through these particular routines. And when we start moving into the design patterns, and when we start looking at the various different designs of OOP and the systems and whatnot, then we start looking at these defined mechanisms. Okay, so encapsulation helps with data protection, as I've just mentioned, code maintainability, code reuse and adaptability to new requirements. Code is better maintained when its definitions and boundaries are rigid. Okay, so if you start playing around, if the definitions of your code base become broad, right, then that's where we get spaghetti code. And in terms of OOP, spaghetti code looks like classes that have zero defined responsibilities. They are responsible for everything. Okay, what I sometimes term as God classes, because they can control a whole bunch of stuff, right? Their definitions are totally non-existent. So, for example, if we were talking about a car, right? So if we were creating a car class and that turned into spaghetti code, then maybe we were talking also about tractors, and maybe we were also talking about mopeds, okay? And then maybe a developer will come along and say, actually, this shouldn't be called a car, this should be called a vehicle. And then all bets are off because we have totally and utterly overly abstracted, and I'll talk about over abstraction when we get to the abstraction part at some other podcast episode, I think, because over abstraction is the killer of OOP, or one of many. Okay, so code that has many responsibilities is difficult to adjust and reuse, as I've just mentioned, right? Because let's say, for example, your car class suddenly gets spaghettyified and turns into a God class, which can also deal with mopeds and tractors, right? Any change that you implement, or implement isn't the right word, any change that you introduce to that overarching, very broad, totally generic class that touches upon every type of vehicle known to man, any change that you put into that, you're going to then have to test all of the other vehicles to make sure that you haven't actually polluted those routines. Okay, so code that has many responsibilities is difficult to adjust and reuse, whereas code that is well defined and encapsulated has less chance to pollute other code. It can be tested and altered as a unit of code, which makes improving, reusing, and adapting to new requirements easier and safer to achieve, right? So encapsulation is a good thing. And it's something that you really need. If you start learning about OOP, it's something that you really need to sort of like lock yourself down into. Learn about those visibility scopes. Learn the difference between private, public, and protected if you're dealing with PHP. So, for example, if you're inheriting off of a base class, then you could access protected methods, but you can't access the private methods, for instance. Private methods can only be accessed internally, right? So if you've got a method that calls another method within that class, you can call the private method, but you cannot call the private or protected methods from outside of the class. You have to call upon the public methods. They are the public. They're the entry points, if you will, into your data definition that's held on the class. This means that we can create read-only properties if we wanted to. This means that our properties can be raw. It doesn't have to be like... and then the public methods can perhaps format that raw data into what is to be used by other classes, other objects. Think of public methods as those little notches on Lego blocks, right? The more public methods you've got, the more notches you've got, right? And you can click your Lego bricks together, connecting those Lego blocks together. And it's the interfaces that are the things that say, yes, this can do that thing, and yes, that can do that thing, and it's a contractual agreement across your application, And this is how, we're moving more into the design stuff now. This is how you would design a good architecture, by creating strong interfaces between each one. And those interfaces may be generic, abstract, and they introduce entry points into, as I said, into your objects. Wow, I've done a lot of talking. Okay, I'm going to leave it there, but before I go, I need to mention something. I am not going to be around for the next 2 weeks because of things. So I'm taking some time off. So the next time you will see me live will be on the 25th of this month. But as I mentioned earlier, we have a tutorial that goes out every week, every Thursday at 10:45. That's all. They're all scheduled up to go all the way up to mid-June. So I will still be pushing out content as we go throughout the thing. But if you want to get in contact with me, please go to howtocodewell.net/contact. I'll still be available there. Please do also check out the courses that I have at howtocodewell.net and those tutorials, those Laravel tutorials. And if you've got any suggestions for future content, if you've got any suggestions for future courses, or if you found a bug in the course, or if you found any kind of typos or any errors like that, please do let me know. howtocodewell.net/contact is the place to be. Take care, everyone. Happy coding, and I'll see you on the 25th of Feb. Cheers. Bye-bye.